Drink up, Mr. Torrance.
I'm the kind of man likes to know who's buying their drinks, Lloyd.
It's not a matter that concerns you, Mr. Torrance. At least not at this point.
Anything you say, Lloyd. Anything you say.
Welcome to Musicians Movie Club. I'm Dan.
I'm Tommy. Is that the official intro?
Yeah.
Gotta give me notice.
So if you know us at all, if you know Tommy, you probably expected this episode at some junction.
It was bound to happen, but never in my wildest dreams did I think it would be so quick. We got a movie to talk about.
Yeah, we do.
Some might say, meaning I might say, the greatest movie of all time.
Oh, wow.
I wouldn't actually say that. It's my favorite movie of all time.
I knew it was your favorite movie. I didn't know.
It's not the greatest. And we'll get into why. I don't want to jump the gun. It is a very good movie. It is my favorite movie. Today we are talking about Stanley Kubrick's 1980 masterpiece, The Shining.
The Shining.
Because it's Halloween and we love spooky stuff, and this movie is spooky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your Shining personal history? What's the bio?
My bio is, it starts off a little sad, but then it gets me loving this movie. When I was very young, my uncle passed away, and he had a crazy movie collection that my mom kind of picked some random DVDs from. Mm-hmm. And in that collection was The Shining, along with Clockwork Orange, Full Metal Jacket, Eyes Wide Shut, and maybe 2001. Basically, I didn't know my uncle was into Kubrick. I didn't know who Kubrick was. But The Shining was the one that I just heard so much about being one of the scariest movies of all time. And me being I think 14 or 15 at the time was just kind of oh, I can't be that scary. It creeped me the fuck out.
Yeah.
And it still does. I've seen this movie dozens of times, and it still makes me just gives me the heebie-jeebies. And I just never watched a movie that effectively made me feel anything.
Yeah.
Up until that point in my life where I was just the vibes are so specific and unsettling and wild.
Yeah. And
I didn't know movies could do that. And then shortly after, I don't want to talk about this a ton, I watched that Room 237 documentary, which further I was wait, movies can mean things? And that was a game changer. So I think the combination of me just watching a horror movie that was good for the first time, and then dipping my toe into film analysis even a little bit as a high schooler, I was okay, this is something different.
My story's not too dissimilar, I guess, because when I started really getting into watching movies, becoming a fan, becoming a viewer, a watcher. This is just I think this is one of the, sort of in my dad's collection. My dad really likes Jack Nicholson, I think, and also just comes from his era,
Yeah.
And so I think that it was always just one of the ones that was on the list. I actually had a kind of moment in my life when I was 17 where I kind of had a whole summer where I was just I had this little running list of movies that I knew I had to watch. And I always, liked movies like Star Wars or whatever,
that's a
but
movie.
Yeah. And I was but I was I have to watch all this stuff. And then the list just kept growing and growing because I started remembering and started really digging in. And of course, it was just all of Kubrick's movies is entry level. We're getting into the good stuff, and stands up to this day.
Yeah. I love thinking of Kubrick as entry level because they're it blows my mind that this was a summer blockbuster. Cause this came out I think this came out in the summer. It was a big tentpole Warner Brothers summer movie. But that combined with just it being one of those movies that movie people watch, it's not an accessible movie in my mind. It's super long. It's super weird. It's kind of slow.
Yeah.
It's also perfect, but
May 23rd, 1980.
That's what I thought. Because I remember maybe it was Room 237 or I was reading something about how this was they're betting all their marbles or whatever the idiom is that I'm forgetting.
Betting all their marbles.
That's definitely not it.
No, I think that might be it.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Something about marbles. I don't know. They just put so much money behind this for Kubrick to make something so deeply fucking weird.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of background alone gives me more of an appreciation for it. Because something I've learned about myself is I just love popular media made by weirdos. And
Yeah.
Kubrick is just like the quintessential weirdo.
I think it's entry level in the sense that it is kind of awe-inspiring, just like all of his movies are. You can tell, even if you don't know what you're looking at, that the craft is of a next level. You know,
Yes.
that's kind of what I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
But of course, like if when you really want to get into the nitty gritty of this movie in particular, you can go pretty far.
Yeah. I mean, I was like reading people's like college dissertations on this film when I was like a junior in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember being at my cousin's house on Thanksgiving, like on my phone, just like reading. I don't even remember what the essay was about. It's something about Native American genocide and The Shining. And I was like, this is crazy.
See, and then I watched Room 237, the documentary, but let's be honest, it's a glorified feature-length video essay.
Yeah,
like
it's
I chose not to revisit it
I didn't either.
but because when I first saw it, I was so mad at it. I was like, especially because it's just clips from The Shining cut together, set to narration, not even like interviews, like narration of people saying this
is what it's about.
This poster in the game room is of a guy skiing is a minotaur, and of course the minotaur, and it's just like
yeah, and like but when I first saw it though, I had just never heard of movies like thinking about those things, so I was like, this is awesome. And then the more I thought about it and like saw more movies, I was just like, okay.
My hot take is, maybe it's not hot. I think that this movie is just Rorschach quality. I don't think that there was any one particular thing that he was trying to, create some puzzle. I think he just wanted to make a puzzle in general, And I have some thoughts on what I think it ultimately means based on what I think Kubrick usually does, but I don't think it's like, oh, he was hiding these symbols and icons in here because he's trying to tell us it's about, the moon landing or whatever, you know? So.
Yeah. And like, I mean, even just beyond what Kubrick intended and like whether that matters, like personally, I also just don't think I care that much. Like the experience of the movie itself is enough for me.
Yeah.
There's a philosophy club at my school when I was in college, and I remember every week someone just brought a question. My question was inspired by Room 237 because I was just like thinking about it, getting annoyed. And I was like, why does everything have to mean something to people? Why can't you just experience it as like this visceral aesthetic experience and have that be beautiful and meaningful in and of itself? And I think I'm at a place with this movie specifically where that's what it is to me.
Totally.
Just like it looks so cool. The vibes are unique. The performances are incredible. The music is like everything's just so memorable and iconic, and like I don't need anything beyond that, really.
You kind of get to the next level, I think, of appreciating, creative things when you learn that, to stop caring about if everything, makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that was like kind of clear to me earlier on when, I maybe have said this on a previous episode that Donnie Darko is like the movie that kind of, that was the first one on that list that kind of spiraled me into everything. And it was just because I related to the sentiments and the feelings of the movie.
Right.
And it didn't matter if there was some actual logical way that it all worked out.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And
if you feel it, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And then like, people like a filmmaker like David Lynch is another guy who, on the same note of, The Shining being kind of like this big weird puzzle, and it's like the puzzle doesn't have to add up, it's just puzzling.
Right.
And that's fun.
Right.
If the vibes and the feelings are there. So I think that's where we're coming into this movie with.
So if you wanted like a deep analysis of the themes of The Shining, you're not going to get that. It's going to be me just geeking out about just like the weird. I have so many notes.
Yeah. Let's talk about the cocktail real quick.
Oh yeah, I made a cocktail for this, as we do.
Yeah.
The cocktail is called the Dull Boy. Dan has provided the whiskey, which is Jack Daniel's 100 proof. What's the official name?
Jack Daniel's bonded. Jack Daniel's bottled and bond.
Okay. Which, yeah, in the movie, Jack drinks Jack Daniels, Danny being his son's name, Jack Daniels. Weird coincidence.
Oh, I didn't even consider.
You never thought of that?
No,
I thought, the first time I watched it, I was like, that's weird.
Guys, I changed everything. I think this is about alcoholism, which
What?
it is.
It is.
But
okay, there are some things on a
course.
less deep level. It's about.
But that's just Stephen King. All
Yeah.
Stephen King stories are about alcoholism.
That's true. This is still, as much as Stephen King probably doesn't want to admit it, this is still a Stephen King adaptation in some ways.
Yeah.
Like loosely, the Volkswagen gets, sidelined by the truck or whatever, and
Yeah.
that's a deep cut reference to this movie for whoever. We have a cocktail to talk about. So Jack Daniels
bonded.
Jack Daniels bonded in honor of Jack Nicholson drinking in the movie. We got Bruto Americano, which is like this very earthy, sort of deep, bitter. I think Amaro, but it's made in California.
Yeah.
So it's not Italian.
It's
And-
Americano.
It's Americano.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, hence the name.
Yeah.
Lemon juice and strawberry syrup. It's not quite a blood red color, like it's lighter than that, but I wanted
Yeah.
it to at least be red. So the strawberry sort of fills that
Yeah,
function.
It's a good like fruity forward kind of thing, but then it also has a the dry
this weird sort of just like
dry earthiness on the back end.
Yeah, and if we want to get into like the movie and its connection to that, again, this was like a very popular horror film, but it's like there's just something off about it.
There is a lot off about it. I was gonna say about Jack Daniels though. What does he say? I wrote the quote. He says, "I got 2 20s and a 10. How about a bottle of bourbon and a glass with some ice?"
Okay, actually, something crazy about that line. So he says that, and he pulls out his wallet, and then he's like, "I'm temporarily light," and then the guy's like, "Your money's no good here anyway. It's on the house or whatever." When he comes back to the bar later in the movie, when it's like full of all the people dancing and stuff, he has money in his wallet again.
Yeah.
Did you catch that?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
And
I love the weird inconsistencies like that. And I don't even know if you can call them inconsistencies because some of them are so glaring they had to like somebody had to make it an inconsistency. But that's one thing people talk about with this movie, especially in some of the weirder theories, is like all these little things that just kind of change in the background or like people's stories being inconsistent over the course of the movie.
yeah.
One of the questions I think about is like how much is intentional or like did they actually just like fuck up?
I think so. I watched some like making of stuff and a few just like Easter egg compilation videos. And something I remember someone saying was that Tom Cruise said that on the set of Eyes Wide Shut that Kubrick was still occasionally like editing this movie. Like he was like for fun. So there is a kind of element that maybe it wasn't finished.
Yeah.
And I think also like we're watching live as we record this. I think it's just like this extended version because there's a shorter version
Of The Shining?
Yeah, that I don't think has this scene with the doctor.
Oh,
maybe?
at the very end.
Well, this doctor that visits Danny and is like, yeah, I don't know about
Oh, okay.
him. Was he touched or whatever? I think some of the like child abuse storyline was cut out.
Oh,
I think that's right.
I've no
Could be
idea.
wrong.
I never heard about there being any different version. The only thing I know is that one of the first cuts of the movie they showed to like test audiences, I think, had a scene at the very end where it's like Wendy and Danny in a hospital room and Ullman comes to visit them. I don't know if you know about that scene.
Okay.
But there was a scene after Jack frozen in the maze where it kind of wraps things up for like Wendy and Danny's story. I thought you were talking about that for a sec with doctors, but I don't know what you're referring to.
So it looks like when it premiered, it was 146 minutes.
Okay.
And then there was an American cut, which I believe is what we were looking at, which is 144.
Okay.
2 hours, 24 minutes.
Yeah.
And then there's a European cut that is 119.
Whoa.
So I think that this American version is the one that most people are still. It might be part of that whole video nasties 80s British anti-gore or something movement. This is unfounded. This is my guess.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't even know about this.
We're just some guys. But yeah, he was still editing it. And I think that, if that's true, then I mean, he's also just an obsessive person, Kubrick.
Right.
And like the fact that, did you know that he was afraid of flying?
Yes.
And that's why this movie, which is set in America, they built the facade of the hotel in a studio in England so that he didn't have to go to America. And then they set the second unit to go do like the opening scene with the car driving around in like Utah. And then it's based on a hotel in Colorado that maybe they got some series of. It's crazy. Like that level of production design is insane.
Yes. Also, Kubrick, scared of flying. How'd you get to London? You're from New York.
He had to fly at least once. I always thought about that.
I'm like, wait a second.
I was like, you had to fly at some point.
He just mustered up all of his strength for one flight, and then he was like, I'm done.
He's like, I'm done. He was. And then he shot like every other movie, like Full Metal Jacket, like all these American-ass movies, like Full Metal Jacket and Eyes Wide Shut that are like set in America, or I guess, Full Metal Jacket's in Vietnam, but the second half at least.
Yeah.
But it's crazy.
I kind of love that.
Maybe he took a boat. Maybe he took the
could
Demeter.
take a boat. The Demeter.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a movie that came out this year.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So it's crazy, and I think a lot of those circumstances of him having to like create a hotel from scratch in a studio, on a soundstage, is probably one reason that everything is weird. Like a lot of the theories they talk about in all the crazy, fan theory stuff is like the architecture of the hotel doesn't make any sense, and it's
right.
And he apparently like got a lot of photos of American hotel rooms and picked certain ones that he thought looked interesting, and it was just like, let's make this room. And I think that all added up into like a weird, clunky architecture.
Even just apart from like physical space, like how the parts of the hotel don't really connect in any logical way, which they don't have to.
Yeah.
But like even design wise, like different parts of the hotel look so wildly different from each other based on what each like scene needs it to look like. Like there's very little consistency within the hotel itself, which I think is interesting. Like one hallway looks so different from another hallway looks different from, like it's just this weird mishmash of designs.
And when I was looking at footage of it and like how exactly it's wrong, like it's specifically the like Danny rolling around on the little, car that he has that is kind of reveals the flaws. But the thing is, you're definitely not thinking about that when you're watching.
No,
the
and
movie.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But like maybe the effect is just subconscious.
Yeah,
and that's sort of like a kismet thing that worked in the favor of the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard people talk about that specifically. That this is this film operates on a subconscious level. I'm doing a little hand gesture for those of you at home because I don't really know what that means, but I think there's truth to it in that, things in the background move or hallways don't connect or like whatever it is, like you're still picking up on it, kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, actually that's like his greatest strength as a director, to the point where I think it, validates kind of the idea that maybe he's planting things because, for example, in our viewing of the film, which I said I was going to call out to it, but as an example, there's a conversation in the car when they're driving to the hotel as a family where it's they're talking about the Donner Party.
Yeah.
And it's like, Jack is like explaining the Donner Party.
Yeah, I'm getting a kick out of it.
To Danny, yeah. And it's like, well, there's a lot of references to historic violence in this movie. And like, there is a lot of Native American imagery in the film. They mention that the hotel is built on a Native American burial ground, which is a classic 80s horror movie choice. Is that the case in the book?
I don't remember. I haven't read the book in years. I only read it once, and it was long.
But this kind of leads me to, okay, I'm gonna tell you, for me, what I think this movie is ultimately about.
Go for it.
So, here's a quote from Kubrick. "There's something inherently wrong with the human personality. There's an evil side to it. One of the things that horror stories can do is to show us the archetypes of the unconscious. We can see the dark side without having to confront it directly." And I wrote a lot about his movies when I was an undergrad, Space Odyssey and Full Metal Jacket in particular. And the common themes in all of these movies is that it's just violence as like an innate human quality.
Yeah.
And
Clockwork Orange too. It's all over.
Oh yeah. It's his
Paths
whole
of
bit.
Glory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So Jack as a character, like he kind of hates his family.
Yeah, from the get-go, they make that pretty clear, which I think is funny and different from the book.
And in this movie, he's isolated from like the social structure and society, and it kind of brings out his elemental, universal desire to destroy. And he breaks down, loses his sobriety, his fidelity, kind of, because he's
has sex with a witch or something.
Yeah, classic.
Classic. I don't think it's a witch, but that was...
It's like his domesticity is being challenged in opposition to his animal nature. I am reading off of notes that I wrote.
Yeah.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It's like he's an animal. He's a barbarian, as all people are, according to Kubrick, And so this is the unraveling. This is the story of him like being put into a situation in which it all explodes. And there are references to the Donner Party, the Native American genocide, and I think they talk about, there's a generational story happening here too, where they're like, the Grady's,
like this has happened before.
It happened before.
And from the get-go, Jack's like, oh, it's not going to happen again. And of course it's going to happen again.
Yeah, and then it expresses itself in like, possibly like him having molested Danny, which is like, that one's pretty vague. I mean, there are hints to it, but
I think it's there. We can get into why I think it's there, but if you have more to say about your...
But that's pretty much it, because I mean, like, Space Odyssey has the clear kind of through line, or at least it's clear to me, about like how violence and technology have interlinked. And it's like the monkey killing the other monkey with a bone,
like the scene after he discovers tools, like the first thing he does is we'll kill for food, and then
and then the bone turns into a spaceship, and the spaceship is the representative of technology, and so technology is used for violence. So evolution, it's like a question mark, in Space Odyssey of like, can you evolve beyond your human nature to kill and destroy? So, and then Full Metal Jacket is like this freaky Jungian, the duality of
that
man.
movie got me to sit down and read Jung when I was in high school. I was like, I'm gonna fucking read. I don't remember what book it was. It's called like The Individual Self or something. Kubrick got me to like read philosophy, for the record. Like I think that's important too, but continue, sorry.
Yeah, so I just feel like it's a recurring theme in his work. And when I was watching it this time, I kind of decided like, ultimately it all kind of adds to that for me. And it goes back to generational qualities. Like it's maybe one of the most puzzling elements for me is the picture at the end, and it says July 4th 1926.
Yeah, it's in the 20s. I can't remember what year,
but it's like, July 4th, like what does that mean in the context of all this? And it's like it's an American thing, and it's like all those rich people having a party or whatever. So I don't know, like for me it just kind of like the overwhelming impression with that, if we're not picking apart little details to mean such specific things, I think it is mostly just about violence.
Yeah. I like that. And I think that plays into, again, not that I want to get into like deep analysis, but like the way I've taken this, especially the generational thing you're talking about, I've always gone with more of a history repeats itself sort of reading, where it's like the very first scene is, here's the history of the hotel, and Jack, like they're all like actively laughing off the story as they're telling it. And then it happens again. Allman is just like giggling a little bit, like, yeah, this is what happened. And Jack's laughing, like
I wrote that down.
It's like such a weird scene because they're all just like making light of the fact that a dude murdered his family like not that long ago.
Jack's response is so like, oh, weird.
He's like, that's a fascinating story. It's like, no, this happened. And if you keep, not giving it its due, what's what I'm looking for? If you don't take that seriously, it's bound to happen again. And that's how I've kind of read this over the years, but that's still secondary to me just thinking it's a fucking cool movie.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Trying to see. I got so many notes and I did not organize them in any way that makes sense.
I wrote down, here's another quote from this movie. I think it's like, I think we might have just missed it in our watch, but I think it's after the game room thing, and Danny runs in and Jack goes, Dan, did you get tired of bombing the universe? And that's a line I never noticed before, and I was like, what the hell?
The other one like that I always think is weird is when Wendy and Danny are walking out to the maze, and Wendy says, "Loser has to keep America clean."
What?
That's a weird...
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, there are so many nonsense lines in this movie where I'm just like, why did they... Like, that one, the Wendy one, I think about all the time.
Yeah.
Just like,
you gotta keep
what
America
does keep
clean.
America clean mean?
Violence. There's wacky dialogue and
Well, okay, actually, something with dialogue I want to bring up if it's cool. Okay, so one thing I love about the structure of this movie is Kubrick's very much like, let's just get all the exposition out of the way in like 3 long scenes at the beginning so we can just do whatever afterwards.
Yeah.
But the reason nonsense dialogue made me think of it, a lot of the exposition at the beginning ends up not being true later. And I love how like he kind of pulls the rug out under you, because we're about to get to the scene in our watch where Dick basically explains The Shining to Danny, like what it is, how it works. And then like by the end of the movie, I'd wager that like 60% of what he says about The Shining ends up not being true, because he's like, it's just pictures in a book, it won't touch you. And like by the end, like there are ghosts opening doors and making out with Jack, and like blood coming out of elevators and shit.
Well, maybe it was his strategy to defend against them, is to imagine that they're pictures in a book.
And that's a way to read it too. I don't think it's like Kubrick is like, well, I guess I don't think Dick's lying to Danny so much as Dick is either trying to protect Danny or like that is his experience of The Shining.
Yeah.
But I also think Danny is stronger in The Shining than Dick is, and maybe that has something to do with the fact that like all these supposed pictures in a book like very much interact with the family.
Yeah.
But the whole point of Dick's talk to Danny is like, oh, they can't hurt you. And then like by the end of the movie, we're just like, what?
Well, also, I mean, this is now more like the King versus Kubrick lore, I guess, because, I mean, pictures in a book could be still true, but, you know, there may not actually be a room full of skeletons and a, witch lady in the shower, and it's just how they see things and they're reacting to it, and that's what makes them insane. You know, like there may not actually be all those things, it's just what they're seeing and it influences their actions.
Yes, up until something lets Jack out of the food storage like pantry.
That's true.
That's the scene where I think all bets are off in this movie, because people are like, oh, Jack used his brain to, like, I don't think he's that smart. Like he doesn't even know he has The Shining, which he does because he'd have to see them.
Yeah.
Because Dick also, the other thing Dick really harps on in his speech is like it's a hereditary thing. And I think both Jack and Wendy have it because they're seeing the same stuff Danny is. Or at least their own versions of those things.
So, and then I watched Dr. Sleep also in prep, which I think is more faithful to maybe adapting King's sequel book, Dr. Sleep.
More or less. I mean,
they reference this movie specifically.
Visually, for sure, a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
because the ending of... Do you know the ending of the book, how the book ends with like the hotel exploding?
Yeah, it's because that's the whole point of them, or it's one of the main points of them being there, right? Is that they're supposed to make sure that it doesn't blow up because of the... Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, and then it does blow up.
Yeah.
Spoilers for Dr. Sleep. Sorry.
Well, but in Dr. Sleep, the hotel's still kind of there, like intact as it is in the movie, though, right? I haven't seen Dr. Sleep in a while.
I think at the end of Dr. Sleep, it blows up.
Right, but the fact that it hasn't blown up already, because the end of the book, The Shining, it blows up. So if it's a faithful adaptation of the book, Dr. Sleep, it would have already exploded. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's true, yeah. It is probably I haven't read either of the books, but I just assume it's a blend of
it's a blend, but I wouldn't, for that reason, I wouldn't call it like a faithful adaptation to Dr. Sleep necessarily. Like, it's the same structure, but there are some things they throw in to make it... make the movie canon in that world, which kind of annoyed me.
I love Dr. Sleep. That's awesome.
It's fine.
I feel like it. If you buy into that movie, it is fucking awesome. Like
I haven't seen it since it was in theaters, and I think I was mostly just mad they were trying so hard to keep the movie as part of like the backstory. I was like, just be Dr. Sleep, like it's fine. Yeah,
I mean, I at least appreciated that they don't recast like they have, or they do recast. I mean, they didn't CGI Jack Nicholson. They just got a guy who kind of looks like Jack Nicholson. You know,
that
and
was
I feel
a good call.
Yeah, and so that's I
that
take
was
that.
nice.
Anyway, I like the movie. It's silly.
I'll rewatch it. It's been a while.
But in Dr. Sleep, they kind of reference that the hotel is like genuinely very haunted.
Yes.
So his picture's in a book line. I don't know. He's like, I don't know. He's also, Scatman Crothers is also like fully popping in and hanging out in Dr. Sleep, even though he's dead.
Yeah.
So
I forgot about that.
he like, I don't know. People are, The Shining is just
It's a silly thing.
Yeah. it's just it's whatever you need it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. But I kind of like that about it because again, it gives this movie like this unpredictability that makes it even scarier than if it was like, okay, it's fine because nothing's gonna hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
I like that this movie just unpredictable is a word I think fits this movie well, especially down to talking about Dick's character again. Like in the book, he survives. In the movie, he is axed to death so hard, and I can't imagine having read the book being excited for the adaptation of this movie, then being like, "Wait, is Dick dead?"
Yeah,
because he like saves them, and in the movie, he's just like off pretty unceremoniously. So that kind of sense of unpredictability, I think, is really cool because I think that works too. It being a horror movie, but on the other hand, it is kind of predictable because like from scene one, you're like, "Oh, Jack's crazy."
Yeah,
like. In the book, it's more of like a slow burn, like Jack's descent into madness. From like scene one, you're like, "There's something off about
that
this
guy's
dude."
fucked up.
And like, I think it's so cool to keep Jack that unsettling from the get go because like, even if you try to keep it a secret or like make it more subtle, like it's a horror movie, you know it's going to happen, so you might as well play into that.
Yeah,
there's no reason to make it a secret that he's going to kill his family. Like, what else is going to fucking happen?
That's also just like good horror movie making. You know, it's just like the expectation is the scary part,
right? You know it's gonna happen, it's just like how and when, but it's gonna happen.
But this movie is the best example of you cannot predict how it's gonna happen.
No. It just gets weirder and weirder and weirder.
Yeah, I wrote a lot of stuff about that, about Jack's performance, Jack Nicholson.
Unhinged.
I fucking love Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
I wrote that he's kind of the perfect American dad actor, you know? Like he plays such a good, like maybe this is just because he comes from the generation of, our parents. Mm-hmm. Coming up in like the new Hollywood era of like, as a young person, and then like by this point he's, dad age. Mm-hmm. And I think he's got this quality where it's like he's not a handsome man necessarily.
No.
But he looks like a real person,
Yeah, they all do in this movie, which is nice.
Yeah. And I feel like that plus his like, I don't know, his just aura is very,
he's like cracking dad jokes, like even when he's like in the process of trying to kill them, he's like, "Here's Johnny."
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah, he's really good at it. Like,
yeah,
and like in his other performances too. I mean, like, Cuckoo's Nest. It kind of like as like I don't know. He's just like an untraditional or non-traditional like screen star, but like very American in that way for some. Yeah. And I feel like in this movie he's like so good at it because like his performance is so sinister.
Yeah.
And like but like hilarious also.
There are some super funny moments in this movie, I think. Like one of my favorite lines, where'd I put it? In the very beginning, after Ullman tells him the story of like Grady and stuff, there's a part where he says, "Rest assured, Mr. Ullman, that's not going to happen with me." And the way he says it, I was like cracking up so hard. Like obviously knowing how it ends, but I'm just like, Jesus Christ! Like even like in the context of the movie, like Jack's like kind of in on it, and I thought that was awesome.
My favorite line from watching it this time was when Grady, the butler, spills a bunch of stuff on him, and he goes, "That's okay. I got plenty of jackets." It's just like the most blasé because you're like, of course you're watching a man who is about to kill his family and you're like, oh, I really thought he was gonna freak out.
Yeah, he's just so calm.
It's amazing. Like
while we're talking about performances, unless you have more to say about Jack Nicholson,
I think he's just really funny.
I think he's fun. Yeah, no, and I think Kubrick has a good sense of humor and like plays into the fact that Jack's just like a charismatic guy in like a really weird, subversive, creepy way.
Yeah.
But like, honest to God, I think Shelley Duvall's performance is like just as good and does not get enough credit.
Yeah.
I do not think Shelley gets enough credit. Like, especially in like the early scenes, just how hard she's trying to stay positive. Just like, but you know, she knows that like nothing's going right. Like you can see it in her eyes, and it's so devastating. Just like how expressive she is and how heartbreaking it is that like she just. I mean, by the end, like her just like I just want to protect my son, and can't.
Yeah.
Like she plays that so well, and it's so hard to watch at times.
Yeah.
But I credit her with a lot of that.
Especially considering like it's well known that Kubrick was like really mean to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which like that was actually no, that's not the question I have for you. I have a directory question for you, but it's kind of related to that. In that I think part of the psychological, just like him being a dick.
Yeah.
Like was the number of takes they had to do.
Yeah.
And people talk about, you know, the baseball bat scene specifically, like 100 whatever takes of just like her weeping with a baseball bat trying to hit Jack or whatever. Do you think there is any like? Do you think doing that many takes actually does anything?
I don't work that way at all.
Right,
like,
and I know you don't. That's why I was.
So I'm like, I think that I do think that there can be something brought out of a performance when it is repeated. As someone who's like, I acted in a short film for a friend who was in my directing cohort, and it was I've never acted dramatically, truly.
Yeah.
And I was always curious to see what. And this was I had to do a scene where the film was about like, I am like having an affair, or no, I'm with a woman who is having an affair with me.
Cool.
And
Rock and roll.
Yeah. And she literally removes my heart.
Oh.
So like there's like a physical heart prop
Like
involved.
Temple of Doom style, or
Like
more
you don't
subtle than that?
see it, but it's just kind of
Damn.
like you see the heart and it's like kept in a jar.
Oh, that's cool.
But there's a scene where like she's like breaking it off with me over the phone, and we had to like, or no, I'm not on the phone. I'm on the phone at some point. Sorry, I'm like recollecting all this. No, there's a scene where we were in the car together and like have to fight, and there was nothing written for the fight, so we had to like make something up. And then also the like. After she takes my heart, I'm on the phone outside of her apartment, and I'm like, you took my heart, you know, whatever. And we did a lot of takes, and I think it was beneficial for me because like, I got kind of exhausted and I kind of scraped a little deeper. Mm-hmm. But also it made me feel bad.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know, man. I'm not any sort of performer in the sense of like I think really hard about what I'm doing other than delivering a line for camera.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how I approach directing in a way, which, you know, and there, you know, are probably people who are trained actors and directors who are screaming at that sentiment, but like, that's just how I do it. And I do think that you can get benefits, but like hundreds of takes, I think you would have got there way before that.
And that's like my hunch too, is like at that point, like it's just torturing them.
Yeah.
It's like, why?
Yeah. It's
Like,
just a movie.
Kubrick just wants to get into the Guinness book, maybe. I don't know.
I think
like the Guinness guy just like off on the sidelines, just like keeping tally.
Yeah, I do like when there's like a tidbit that's like, we did 126 takes of this, and there's some guy with just like one of those clickers at the like, at the door of the venue that's like, click.
Yeah.
But I don't believe in that at all. But I do, and I think he probably is a person who, you know, was thinking pretty highly of himself by that point, which he had, you know, a little bit of a right to, considering what he did, but also like, I don't know, man, you would have got there after 30 tops.
Yeah.
You know.
Even, yeah.
Yeah. Like. Yeah. So that's unfortunate. And also you hear those stories about him like on Eyes Wide Shut, not even like an emotionally, you know, dramatic scene like the baseball bat stuff. It's like in Eyes Wide Shut, it was like he walks into a room and they're like, we did
It's like,
50
did he not
takes
do
of
it
this.
the right way.
Yeah, I
how many
hate
ways
that.
can Tom Cruise walk into a room?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
No, I'm not a perfectionist, and I don't like. What are you gonna change at that point? Like,
Yeah.
really. Rolling my eyes at Kubrick. Never thought I'd do it.
You gotta.
You gotta. Fun fact: one of my favorite moments in the entire movie. It just popped up is why I thought of it. The jump scare when it's just Tuesday. You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about? Where like there's this huge music build and it just goes bump. And it
Yeah.
just says Tuesday on the screen. Favorite jump scare in a movie.
I forgot that there were text slides in this movie, and I don't think that they're necessary.
They aren't, except for the one cool thing they do is every like time it tells you what the time is, it gets closer and closer as it goes. So it's kind of like this sort of like building to the fact that things are getting more and more tense, maybe. Because the first one is a month, then it's like Tuesday, then it's like Saturday, then it's like 4:30 p.m.
Yeah.
So it kind of does that.
Yeah, it's kind of glossed over that it's not like this movie takes place right after they move in. There were
Yeah.
a few months where everything was fine.
Right.
Until the ghosts start acting up.
Until the ghosts start acting up. Which brings me to a note I wanted to bring up that I'm trying to find right now. Okay, so this has to do with an inconsistency that I think is very intentional. So
Okay.
early in the movie, when Wendy's talking to the doctor, she says Jack hasn't had a drink in 5 months.
Yeah.
And like, Wendy's just like trying to cover for him, just like, I don't, like at the time you don't think she's lying. You're like, okay, she actually thinks things are getting better, or she really just wants to protect Jack.
And then when he goes to the bar, he says, on the wagon for 3 months or something.
Yes. So what he says is, yeah, they've been at the Overlook for 2 months, but Jack says 5 months again. So they say 5 months both times.
Yeah.
But then Jack says something even crazier, because Wendy at the beginning says he stopped drinking when he hurt Danny, which was 5 months ago.
Yeah.
Jack later in the movie says he hurt Danny 3 years ago. He says that was 3 goddamn years ago.
Yeah. Well, time is manipulated in general in this movie, like as far as perception of time.
But it's weird that Wendy would be like, he stopped drinking when he hurt Danny. That was 5 months ago. And then Jack would be like, I've been sober for 5 months and hurt Danny 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Something's not adding up.
The easy out could be that he was drinking secretly.
Well, no, but the Danny getting hurt 3 years ago versus 5 months is the problem, not the drinking.
Yeah, I guess.
I think they just like stuck to a story and keep saying it.
Yeah, or like it happened multiple times.
Or it happened multiple times.
That is the exact thing that I think inspires the goofy speculation about this movie, because it's like we were saying, extremely detail oriented guy.
Yeah.
Who made this movie, a perfectionist.
Yeah.
But could not get the script supervision, of like.
See, I think that one's on purpose. I really do think they just like picked a story, they're sticking to it, even the numbers, because he's fucked up so much.
Yeah.
That's my read of it.
Yeah.
And I think Jack honestly genuinely believes it.
Yeah. His mind is warped.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of time perception silliness going on. I mean, obviously with the like ghosts of the 20s, but also now like, the way that he, presents his sobriety or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like it's all mixed up. And which is another disorienting kind of, just the architectural flaws, the logical flaws. Like it's all in service of the greater bad vibe.
Just I feel bad.
Yeah.
God, I love this movie so much. Another Shelley Duvall like little performance thing that I love, when Jack is like, why don't you get the fuck out of here or whatever, when he like tears up his paper and he's all mad at Wendy and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a moment that we're about to get to, and I know we said we weren't going to talk about us watching the movie a bunch, but Wendy makes a face that like is the most like wounded puppy dog looking face I've ever seen in my life, and it breaks my heart every time, and it's why I think Shelley Duvall is a good actress.
Yeah.
There's a moment right coming up where it's just like, Jack's like, do you think you can handle that? And she just looks so fucking devastated. Like her whole face just like drains of color. I'm like, how did she do that? I love Shelley Duvall a lot. That's what I'm trying to get at. Look how sad she is. She's so
bummer.
sad. I know. Jack's such a dick. And this isn't even that far into the movie. Like, that's the crazy...
He's
like,
not even that insane yet.
No, even, like, the scene where he's, like, looking out the window all creepy.
Yeah.
Like, that's, like... I don't even think we've gotten to that yet, but it's, like, a third of the way into the movie.
This is the Keep America
this is
Clean.
him. No, this is Jack looking out the window, all creepy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and this is like a month and a couple days into it. Like they haven't been to the hotel that long, but it's still been.
And this is on a sound stage.
Yeah, we're at the point where it's Wendy and Danny outside throwing snowballs at each other, and there's just like so much fog and snow. But then it cuts to Jack staring out the window like a lunatic.
The classic image.
The classic Kubrick stare. It's so good.
He ate without YouTube.
He ate without YouTube. I'm not even sure what that means.
You know how like it's kind of a meme, I guess. You know how like I don't know. Maybe you don't do this. I definitely do this. It's like if you're eating like at home alone, or even out and about, if you're eating, you like, kind of have to have some other kind of stimulation.
Yeah.
So it's like.
Oh, you're watching YouTube.
You got to watch YouTube while you eat.
He ate without YouTube.
He ate without YouTube, and that's why he killed his family. It awakened his barbarian.
In a time where YouTube was not a thing, that's what tipped him off.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about Steadicams?
Sure.
I kind of want to talk about Steadicams because this movie was revolutionary in terms of just like this wasn't the first movie to use it, right? I don't think this was the first, but it was the first to like.
It was
I
an
did some research
innovation.
on it. It was an innovation, and the guy who invented it like worked on the movie. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, because I believe that previously, I think they kind of pioneered the Steadicam that was like just attached to a person instead of being on a dolly track.
Yeah, because I've watched the videos of the camera operators just like full on sprinting behind Danny while he's on his tricycle.
Yeah,
and it's crazy just like the mechanism attached to them, like to capture those scenes and make them look smooth and just so ominous, like they're just floating above the ground.
It's super cool because it is a very traditional Kubrick camera style to like have a lot of moving camera work, like specifically tracking and stuff. Like, I mean, Paths of Glory is kind of famous for like the tracking shots that go across all the battlefields.
Yeah, but they also
stuff.
had the track the entire way. Just like, yeah.
So this is like, I think where he kind of got a lot more like play time with it, where he got freed of the tracks, and also so that you didn't have to like see the tracks when you're moving around like really long stretches of hotel set.
Right.
And I wrote a note. This is very like film school visual design, but like the way that the Steadicam kind of like works in the visual of this film is like the sets are designed and the cinematography, like the way the shots are composed, is very like perfect looking. Mm-hmm. It's very like neat lines on the plane of vision. Characters are usually framed very centrally, but the Steadicam kind of gives you like this like woozy uneasiness, and like you kind of like perfect environments, but they're like kind of like rocking the boat a little bit. Yeah. And it kind of gives you more of that disorienting kind of like cerebral like unease.
I like that.
Yeah. We should get a hotel and make a movie.
I have I have an idea for a movie that takes place in an abandoned hotel. And I need to write it.
Is there any skeletons in it?
No. Well, there could be.
Let me punch it up for you. I just skeletons to every scene.
Where can I add a skeleton to the screenplay? No, I've had this fucking idea for a dystopian like horror movie since like my freshman year of college, and I just haven't committed to it, but I have it mostly outlined. It takes place in a hotel. That's all I'm gonna say.
Let's work it out.
It's pretty good if I do say so myself, but it also doesn't exist yet. In my head, it's really good. All right, another scene I wanted to talk about when Jack is at the bar for the first time talking to Lloyd.
Yeah. That might be like my favorite scene.
It's such a good scene.
Yeah.
It is one of my favorite scenes. I love how he gets drunk after one glass of Jack. I think that's funny.
Yeah.
But just like his mannerisms in that scene specifically, like, are insane. Him referring to his wife as a sperm bank is insane. The whole thing with the inconsistencies of time is insane. I really wanted to be in a band called the Lloyds after this movie for a while. I've always wanted to be in a band called the Lloyds. Then I found out there's an artist already named Lloyd out there, so I don't think I can do that.
Lloyd in Space.
I don't know what that is.
It was it's a TV show where about an alien teenager.
That's a good name.
The Lloyds is good. It's like the Caesars, the Hives,
Yeah.
the Lloyds.
I'd love to be in a band called the Lloyds, and I just wanted to make reference to that because I think it's a good name, but I want to have it on the record that I thought of it.
Yeah.
So
you
no
can
one takes
sue-
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though there's already an artist called Lloyd, so I can't. I mean, like it's different enough.
What if it was like LOYDZ?
Oh, I hate that. We're also about to get to one of my other favorite scenes in the movie, where it's Danny and Jack in Jack and Wendy's bedroom, and it's a very simple scene, but I think it's maybe the creepiest in the entire movie, where it's just Danny sitting on Jack's lap, and he's like
petting him.
Yeah, he's like petting him, and this doesn't help with like the sexual abuse sort of undertones.
Yeah.
But like, literally, I had to think about it. Where'd it go? Where'd my note go? Okay, from memory. I mean, we're about to get to it, but it's just like the creepiest fucking scene because it's just like both of them are like not looking at each other. They're both staring off into the distance past each other.
Yeah.
And Danny looks terrified. Like you look at his face in that scene and he's just like scared to be there. And Jack's just talking to him. But the amount of tension there, you're like, what happened?
Yeah. Okay, so here's that scene with
Yeah, we made it to
Jack
the
and
bedroom
Danny.
scene. And it's just like Jack's staring at Danny. And Danny's so scared. And like there aren't a lot of like child performances I like that much, and I'm still on the fence as to whether Danny Lloyd is like quote unquote good in this movie. But this scene specifically, I think he's really effective. Just the way he's like hesitant even in approaching like his dad.
I think he's just got a good child performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause he's supposed to be a little off too.
Yeah.
Which he would be if like dead people were talking to you or whatever you want to. I mean, that's not what happens, but it's kind of what happens. But just Danny's just like staring, like you can actively see him dissociating, and that's really upsetting.
Yeah.
This is like maybe the most upsetting scene in the movie for me. I just hate it. It makes my skin crawl.
A lot of good fits in this movie. Jack Torrance wears a lot of like cool sweaters and robes and stuff.
I have a note in here about the costume design, and the word I used is unhinged, but I was mostly talking about Wendy's outfits.
Yeah.
Just like the bright, wild colors and like corduroy overalls and Western looking cardigans and stuff.
The like yellow Native American
Yeah.
stylized.
Yeah, it's
coat.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's like cool that even like those sorts of details that like everything about this movie is just so iconic, down to like the outfits like even stick in your head. Like I think about the Apollo sweater all the time that Danny wears.
That'd be a good Halloween costume.
I've thought about it, but like sweaters are expensive.
Yeah.
But I'd love to do that. I'd love to do a proper Shining Halloween costume. It's weird. It's like all the outfits are iconic in the context of the movie, but also like if I wore them out of context, I don't think anyone would immediately be like, "Oh, you're dressed as like Wendy."
I think if you wore the Apollo one,
Yeah, the Apollo
people
one
would be
probably.
like, "Is that the Shining?"
Yeah, but if I was wearing like a corduroy like burgundy jacket. and,
Oh
like-
yeah, nobody would be like,
yeah.
"You're like, oh, are you Wendy from?"
Are you just Jack hanging out in his loungewear at this formal party? A lot of my notes have to do with the end of the movie. If you want to jump ahead to beyond where we are.
I've gone through most of my stuff.
Oh, I still have like a bunch left, but I can just do
down.
the greatest hits.
Jack Nicholson is one of my favorite impressions to do.
I was about to say, I like that you jumped into an impression where you were doing his line from the movie.
Yeah.
It's a good impression.
Wendy, light of my life, darling.
It's so good.
It's fun.
He's such a good voice.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna start reading random notes if that's cool. And like we can turn any of them into conversations, but I have a couple points I want to hit and I won't forgive myself if I don't. The first one, when it cuts to Dick watching the news in his bedroom when he's like and Danny's about to like shine him. And it's just like this slow zoom out to reveal these weird like pornographic paintings on his wall. I love that. It's just like such a weird, like, because what's important in that scene is what they're saying on the news, but you're not paying attention because you're like, oh, naked ladies.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a weird choice.
I always thought that was like a shocking jump to like the R rating getting really boosted by that. You know, I was like, this is so unnecessary, but I love the idea that like Scatman Crothers is like at home, he's just kind of a little freak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with his big afro naked ladies. It's kind of awesome, but it's just such a like because what he's saying on the news is like a little important.
Yeah.
I don't remember specifically what, but my note was like the news is like talking about like the snowstorm and stuff, which like you'll find out. But yeah, that was fun. I want to talk about the music because Wendy Carlos is amazing. We talked about her in the Tron episode as well.
Yeah,
but she also did the opening like weird voice music for this. which like just so the opening credits, despite the weird font and color choice, which I still don't understand why,
I love
it's just
it.
like blue Helvetica.
Yeah, I actually love that.
I love it too, but like it's not like a good choice, I don't think. Like it's endearing because it's in this movie, I think.
It looks kind of digital for 1980.
It does.
So I think that's unsettling in a fun way.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with the movie?
Nothing.
But like the voices in the background, like I love that that's like the only like I think that's an original piece of music for the movie, but none of the rest of it is. There's no other like everything else is just there's no traditional score, but it's music that Kubrick picked from like postmodern composers he was into that he thought fit, and it fits so well to the point where like the editing is almost like it feels choreographed at times.
Yeah.
Like especially scenes where it's like Jack walking down a hallway and he'll be like moving his arms and it'll time with like a vibraphone hit or something weird. Like I like how just choreographed parts of this feel to the music is so cool. Since the music wasn't made for the movie, but I think Kubrick, just being such a fan of music, knew how to like
Cut it.
how to
In
cut it
hindsight,
super
yeah.
well. I love that. Did you notice the fourth wall break in this movie? Because I think about it all the time, and it's very quick. But there is a moment where after Jack is like in their bedroom and he's like yelling at Wendy like, I'm not gonna let you fuck up my life anymore, and leaves. As he's turning the corner, he looks directly into the camera, then keeps walking.
No, I don't.
The first time I didn't notice it the first time I saw it, but I can't unsee it anytime I watch this movie. But he looks directly down the barrel of the lens.
This is later when he's.
This is later. It's like after he goes in the room 237. Then he comes back to their bedroom and he's like, I didn't see anything. And Wendy's like, we still need to take him to a doctor. And he's like, I'm not gonna let you fuck up my life. Like, we're not taking Danny to a doctor.
Yeah.
And he storms off. As he's storming off, he looks directly at the camera.
Okay.
And it's awesome.
We'll have to look out for that.
I think it's so cool.
He was like, is that good enough take for you, Stan?
Just a fuck you to Stanley. Stanley was like, you know what? I'll keep it in.
Yeah.
Like, I just think it's like I don't know. And it's like a cool time to do it. Cause it's there are a lot of points in this movie that feel like a point of no return, but that one especially feels like the moment where he's like, all right, I'm definitely going to kill them. Like even before he's talked to Grady, cause he goes to the ballroom after that to talk to Grady.
Yeah.
Like I think in that moment, he's like, okay, you know, it's about to happen. Looks at the camera and then like goes to do it. Mm-hmm. I think that's neat. I want to talk about the scene between Jack and Grady in the red bathroom.
Yeah.
Because that's just like a really important scene, and also like has weird racist undertones that also play into some of like the Americanisms of the movie. And not even undertones, like directly racist things said by Jack and Grady. Mm-hmm. But like one thing that stood out to me the first time I saw it is just the set design of that bathroom is so jarringly different from the rest of the ballroom, which is like very elegant and gold, and like is walking into this bathroom and it's just so fucking red.
Yeah. It's a very cool set piece.
It's such a cool set, and I don't really understand the point of it, and it doesn't matter because it looks cool and that's fine, but like of all like the sets in the movie, for some weird reason, like I think of the red bathroom the most.
Yeah. I think so
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
And it's also just like a long scene. Like I have this piece of art in my apartment that's every frame of The Shining, like front to back, and there's just this giant red stretch, and looking at that and just being like, wow, that is a long scene of just them talking. But it's another scene that's just like, yeah, it's just talking, but it's super unsettling and like weird, and Jack's vocal inflections are super creepy.
Yeah, and then there's also that iconic photo of Kubrick directing that scene where like Jack Nicholson is like posing, but he's out of focus and the picture wasn't of him.
Yeah, I love that.
This is my favorite frames of the movie. This is the reactions of Jack Nicholson.
Oh, just like
just looking like. Oh.
Yeah, this is the scene where Danny comes from room 237 after maybe having been strangled by a crazy lady in a bathtub, and it cuts to Jack. He just looks so out of it. It's like his son was just like assaulted, and he's like, oh.
It's like a physical comedy bit. Like what?
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, he just like isn't reacting.
I think I made that my banner on Twitter.
My banner on Twitter is also The Shining right now.
Wow, it was a planted piece by us to let everyone know that we were doing the podcast.
Because everyone's going to our Twitter profiles to see what the latest cover photo is.
The next movie club episode.
Ooh. One thing, back to the Grady Jack scene where they're just like talking in the bathroom. One thing I love about that scene is Jack's vocal inflections when he's like starts getting a little interrogation-y with Grady, where he's like, what did you do with your daughter? Like, I know what you did. Like, were you always the caretaker? Like, he's kind of like interrogating Grady a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I love that he takes this tone of like, I know what you did, because he's almost like getting a kick out of asking these questions because he already knows.
Yeah.
I just thought that was really interesting, that like the whole tone of that scene is like, again, racist and awful, and like the things that like he's trying to convince him to kill his son, like that's bad. But there's kind of like this weird, funny thing of like, few things make me laugh more than somebody trying to be subtle and failing.
Yeah.
Because Jack's like trying to be subtle and asking these questions. He's like, "You a married man, Mr. Grady?" And it's like he's just like not even close to coming off as like anything but like, I know what you did.
Mr. Grady, you were the caretaker here. I recognize you. I saw your picture in the newspapers. You, chopped your wife and daughter up into little bits. And then you blew your brains out.
I don't know if I explained it well, but I like that scene a lot.
Yeah.
I guess the last like specific scene I want to call out is the baseball bat scene with the hundreds of takes, because I think that is my favorite scene in any movie ever, is the baseball bat scene. Starting with like one of my favorite lines in cinema history is when it's a shot from behind Wendy and she's like looking at the I'll work in no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah.
And then it like zooms back to reveal Jack standing behind the wall kind of hiding from her, and all he says is, "How do you like it?" And I think it's so fucking funny. But just like how it reveals him is like so creepy that it just like breaks the tension for a sec with this goofy line. And then obviously ramps up the tension immediately afterwards, because like it's the whole thing of them having their conversation and the stairs. But yeah, it's just two of my favorite actors ever, just like going at it and doing such a fucking good job. And it also has what I'm going to call one of my favorite audience surrogate lines of all time, because Jack's doing his whole thing where he's like, "Do you ever think about my responsibilities? I signed a contract," like that whole bit.
Yeah.
And then there's a point where Wendy just stops and goes, "I'm very confused." And it's just like the perfect, like, same, like, kind of line in a movie where I think Kubrick, like, understands that we're just like, what the fuck is going on?
Confused.
When he just stops and says, "I'm very confused." And I'm like, yep, same. Maybe another fourth wall break, but also she is very confused. And I'm just like, yeah, because the monologue Jack is giving about responsibilities makes zero sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that big a deal.
All right, so now we're watching the first time that Jack sits at the bar with Lloyd. And I was looking, I love bartending scenes in movies, for one.
Yep.
So I have a feeling that Jack Daniels' old number 7 was not available in the 20s.
Yeah.
To the degree that, or at least not with that branding. I mean, Jack Daniels comes from like the 1880s or something. But
yeah, there are a lot of weird anachronisms in this movie for sure, of just things out of time in different places, which I think plays into things thematically, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that maybe what's intended here is like that's probably the thing that's the drink that he abuses specifically.
Right.
But
he would. It would be Jack Daniels.
Old Jasper Daniels.
Daniels.
It's his real name.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Hey, editor's note here. I did some research, and old number 7 has been available since the 1880s, and it has been labeled with the classic black and white label, or a version of it, since probably around the turn of the century. The kicker here is that in 1921, when the 4th of July ball is taking place, it was, of course, Prohibition. And Jack Daniels had actually not been producing any whiskey. Prohibition had gone into effect in Tennessee from a statewide prohibition law in 1910. They moved their production to St. Louis and Birmingham for a while, but none of that whiskey was ever sold due to quality problems. Jack Daniels didn't start producing whiskey again until 1938. Anyway, that's just a little Jack Daniels trivia that I decided to share with you. Back to the podcast. And I was looking at the back bar. We got some Tanqueray. I
was doing the same thing.
I saw some Cointreau. I didn't really recognize anything else. There was a bottle that said martini that I assume is a vermouth.
Bottled martini.
Bottled martini, gross.
That's pretty gross.
He says, I'd give anything for a good glass of beer. Which reminds me of, like, not too long ago, I had a guy walk up to the bar and say, I'll just have, like, just a good, I got, like, a good bottle of beer. And I'm like, what kind, dude? And I ended up just giving him a Lone Star. But I was like, that's pretty much a good bottle of beer.
Good bottle of beer.
On the Wikipedia page, it's the image that they use, right?
I had that same thought. I just saw Eyes Wide Shut at Alamo. They're doing a Kubrick series right now.
Yeah.
And I went and saw Eyes Wide Shut, and there's a scene where Tom Cruise goes to that jazz club to see his friend Nick Nightingale play. And he's like, I'll take a beer.
I hate that.
I hate it so
Yeah.
much. And he, like, that's all he says. And the guy's just like, okay. And he's like, walks away. And I'm like, what? Unhinged.
I always say, what kind?
Yeah.
like literally.
I don't want to decide for you.
Yeah. Yeah, but this scene at the bar with Lloyd, the first one, is like a crazy release, like, of the tension. That's why I really like it, because it's like he really blows up in this scene. It's awesome.
Yeah. But it's like not even like he does anything violent, or it's just like it's all psychological, just like one of the first, well, not the first instance, like there are a lot of instances already where we're like, oh, this guy's fucked up.
Yeah.
But
He says, like, I love the little son of a bitch. I'll never touch the hair on his fucking head or whatever.
yeah, little
Yeah.
fucker throwing my papers all over the floor, which is from the book. I remember that scene in the book. So some of the backstory is one thing I wanted to bring up I didn't write down. You know the weird bear costume guy?
Yeah.
That's like sucking off the other dude in the bedroom Wendy sees. Apparently, not apparently, I read the book. In the book, they have like a whole backstory.
Oh.
And I love that Kubrick was just like, that's a weird image, and just pulled it with no context and
Yeah.
like used it.
And Stephen King's watching like, oh my God.
Those were the most important characters.
Yeah.
I think the movie's so much better than the book.
Yeah.
Like, obviously two different media, so like it's gonna be completely different, and like, you know, apples and oranges or whatever, but like this, I just think the movie's so much scarier.
Well,
the
something
book
that-
just explains everything, and I'm like, I don't need to know.
Yeah.
It's so long.
So Kubrick always said that he only picked books that he thought were imperfect to adapt. Most of his movies are adapted from books.
Yes.
Um,
That surprises me with Clockwork Orange. Okay, whatever. I'm gonna take that back. Go ahead.
and I think that, you know, he said that,
Yeah.
which is probably a pretty egotistical thing to say, but
Yeah.
but I guarantee you that's like exactly why Stephen King hates it. Is like, you know, it's like, you fucker. You thought
Yeah,
you could
but, like,
do what I
he's
could do
not
better.
wrong.
Yeah, he's not wrong. But like, you know, yeah, like you said, it's a different medium entirely.
And that's the thing too, like translating anything from one medium to another, like in the context of like it being a movie, it's going to be imperfect, so it wasn't meant to be, so you're going to have to change things. But I appreciate that Kubrick was willing to like go the extra mile to just do his own thing.
Yeah.
Because it's so different. Oh, we got to the naked lady with the afro above Dick's TV. It's so unnecessary, but I love it so much. But not just one. It cuts to
got
him
more.
watching the TV and zooms out even slower. We got a second naked lady. Wow.
Come on, Scatman.
Go for it. Get your what's the word I'm looking for?
Get your bag.
Softcore porn, I don't know. Another line delivery I wanted to bring up. Toward the end when Wendy's like going to check out the snow cat and Jack's like, why don't you go check it out? I quote that all the time. Like, why don't you go check it out? And feel like, what are you
doing?
I love that line.
What are you up to, big guy?
Go check it out. Go check it out. Go check it out.
Yeah, this movie's funny.
It's a funny movie.
It's
I don't even care.
a comedy, actually. Sorry, we shouldn't have released this in October.
What's comedy month? What's the peak month for comedy? We should do American Psycho for comedy month. That's a comedy.
What is comedy month? It's like
What's April Fools.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we'll do another Shining episode in April, but from the perspective of it being a comedy.
Yeah.
Just talking about Stanley Kubrick's comedic genius, which he is. He made
Yeah.
Dr. Strangelove. He's a funny guy.
Dr. Strangelove, check it out.
It's so good. All of his movies are. I watched 2001 yesterday with a friend who had never seen it, and like
Yeah.
we got really high, and I was nervous because like not to talk about 2001 instead of The Shining, but I feel like we talk about 2001 in every episode.
Yeah, we
now.
gotta hit it one time.
Gotta hit it one time.
In this case, 2 times.
2 times. They had never seen it, and I told my dad I was watching it with them, and he was like, "Why are you like really? You're gonna watch a 2.5 hour long slow burn sci-fi with like as like a fun thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And they ate it up. Like
Nice.
every little camera trick and like practical effect, they were like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen." And it was so fun. And I remember last year, a similar thing. I did a big showing of The Shining for like a bunch of friends. Made like a cocktail for it that was just rum and grenadine, but it looked like blood, so that was fun. Were you weren't there for that? Were you?
No, I am in the group chat.
Yeah, you're in the group chat, but I was about to say I didn't think you were there. It's confusing now that everyone's
Yeah.
But it was another thing where I was just like so shocked by like how into it everyone was. And granted, I was giving a lot of commentary trying to get people into it.
Yeah.
But I'm like thinking about what I said earlier about his movies not being accessible. But like every time I show somebody a Kubrick, they're like, "That was crazy."
Yeah, like I said, it's operating on a different level. Like you have to like, I think even if you're just coming in casually, and you don't like have necessarily all of the context and all the, film language, like you kind of have to acknowledge. This is not unlike what Bridget said about Tarantino.
Yeah,
it's like she just like had never seen someone like really making a movie that. Was
that movied
that movie that was movied, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am kind of shocked though that 2001 was a success. That's a tough sell.
It's such a tough sell. I sold it as the greatest sci-fi movie of all time, so I think that helped.
Yeah.
And then so they were like, okay, well I guess I have to see it. And like, yeah, it went over so well.
Nice.
I was thrilled. It was so fun.
I would probably also say it's the best sci-fi movie ever made.
The only one that I also really, really, really like that I put up there personally is WALL-E. I think WALL-E is like perfect.
I would say Alien and Blade Runner.
Yes,
in the combo.
Blade Runner was another one I mentioned to my friend. We were talking about other like great sci-fi movies. Yeah.
What do you think is the best horror movie of all time?
Best? I mean, my gut says Shining.
But we've established this is a comedy.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, outside of The Shining.
That's a joke. Comedy month. Welcome.
Comedy month.
October is comedy month.
Comedy month on the pod. Best horror.
You can say The Shining.
Well, I want to say The Shining, but I also want to give like other ones that are up there. The other one that comes to mind is the original Halloween.
That's my answer.
Yeah. Good. I was just thinking about watching that yesterday. My brother's in town, and I wasn't sure if he was going to come over. And if he did, I was like, we're going to watch Halloween.
Yeah.
And he ended up not coming over. But like, I love Halloween.
Dude, let's watch Halloween.
Let's absolutely watch Halloween.
Yeah.
That can be next year's special episode. Well, with Donnie Darko, we got to do at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or we could just watch Halloween for fun.
You can't just watch Halloween.
Yeah.
That's true. Doesn't have to be for a thing.
Yeah. I am a nut for Halloween for like horror franchises. I've seen almost every major franchise through, like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Chucky, Alien, Final Destination. I just revisited.
I saw you logging those.
I watched 3 of those in one night because they're like 80 minutes and it's like I absolutely zero brain activity involved.
Yeah.
Saw Paranormal Activity. I love it. I love the way that, especially when they are franchised, because it's just like they're always a simple premise. They're trying to trigger like exactly one sort of emotional response usually, and when they can do better, then it's like amazing. Like it's like you set the bar pretty low. You have one goal, and when you do it really well, it's really exciting. And then like just from like a postmodern standpoint, like watching the Friday the 13th movies from beginning to end, you're just like, I can't. The 4th movie is called The Final Chapter. Mm-hmm. They made another 8 movies.
There are that many?
Oh yeah, there are 12 Friday the 13th movies.
I haven't seen any of them.
There are 12 or 13 Halloweens.
Yeah.
There are like 10 Nightmare on Elm Streets. There's like 8 Chuckies in a series.
Right.
Yeah. There are now 11 Saw movies.
Yeah.
Which I just watched Spiral. I might go see Socks in theaters.
I haven't seen any Saw movies either. I just I don't know. It's not that I've avoided the franchises. I think I just I don't even know I haven't seen the franchises. I just haven't gotten into them.
Watch Saw 1 and decide, because
I really don't want to watch Saw.
yeah, they get pretty rough, dude. It's from another time. Like, like not even like, oh, you know, we like if you watch a movie from the 60s or whatever, and you're like, oh, they're saying some really uncool language. It's like, Saw is from another time. It's like when we just totally were out what we would call post 9/11 horror.
Yeah.
That shit's wild.
I don't know about that.
I think it's worth seeing just the first movie.
I'll watch,
just gritting your teeth. You do not need to watch that whole series.
No, I have no interest in watching the whole series.
But they are.
Well, the new one takes place between 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
So I could watch the first one and then the new one and then be done potentially. Because I heard the new one's fine.
I'm sure that, you know, it might be a lie. I'm like, because those movies operate on twisting your expectations.
Why would any sort of media conglomerate ever lie to the public? Why? What reason have they to lie?
Well, I'll tell you. Can I spoil one Saw movie?
Yeah, I don't care.
Folks, I'm going to spoil the movie Jigsaw, which after they did the original run of, I guess, 8 Saw movies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the 9th one, which came in 2017, I think. So it had been a break of like 3 or so years after Saw the final chapter.
What was the final chapter with these people?
It's a great way to promote a movie. After you know,
all the farewell tours and like that kind of bullshit.
Final Destination. The 4th movie is called The Final Destination, and then they made the 5th one, Final Destination, the next year.
God.
So in the movie Jigsaw, not The Shining, the movie Jigsaw, it's like, because these movies kind of operate on the idea of like the original killer dies in the 3rd movie.
Yeah.
And it's just like continuously coming up with ways in which people would still be doing Saw stuff. You gotta find a way to explain it.
Yeah.
And at least 2 movies involve him just having set up a bunch of traps before he died.
Oh, that's less fun.
Yeah. Well, in Jigsaw, it's like it's just happening again. Mm-hmm. And you're like, and then you hear his voice, and you're like, well, what the fuck? This guy's super dead. And then at the end of the movie, turns out it was a prequel.
I hate that.
I actually was like, kind of like, okay, you got me. Like, because like the whole time, because like the traps are all like made of wood and stuff all of a sudden. And you're like, oh, and it turns out he was just testing. So I think Socks might not be a movie between the first and that's my guess as a Saw.
The description on Letterboxd, the first sentence is taking.
I know what it says.
Okay, all right, fine, fine.
Anyway, that was a little recap for you. Shining 3, bring it on. I'll see it. Doctor Sleep 2.
Doctor Sleep 2.
In space.
2 Doctor, 2 Sleep.
Shining 3, Colorado Drive.
The 3-9ing. The number inside of it at some
eventually
point.
You do, yeah.
Yeah.
Or the 5-inning.
5-inning.
So we got to get 5 of these out.
Yeah, we got to keep cranking these out with Ian McGregor.
What would you do if someone said you have to write The Shining 3? What would you do? What's the story?
Disappear to Cuba or something? I don't want to do that.
It's not like there's a gun to your head. It's just like there's like
okay.
I'm like write The Shining 3. No, it's
what would I do?
what would the story be? You absolutely had to do it.
God.
Yeah, actually, no, I changed my mind. There's a gun to your head.
Yeah, I need a second to think about that because I don't really remember much about Dr. Sleep or how it ends. Because I haven't seen it since it was in theaters, and I didn't really care about it enough to remember.
They destroy all the steam vampires.
Okay, so and I wouldn't honestly pull them in anyway because I didn't care at all about any of them. I did not give a shit about those vampires.
Dr. Sleep does end pretty definitively.
Right. I don't know. Would
prequel.
Danny have kids? Like, nope. I'd be interested in like the generational trauma they're exploring if like Danny were to have a kid, maybe. But that wouldn't make sense.
It would be a classic horror movie thing where you're like, he had a kid off screen.
Yeah, it would have to be that, which is whatever.
Like when he was like an alcoholic at the beginning of the movie.
Just like fucking around, had a kid at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be the kid trying to find Danny like via the shine. Like starts
The
communicating.
kid grows up
Uh-huh.
and then goes through the gradation,
The gradation.
if you will.
What gradation meaning?
Like becomes the caretaker of. It's Danny's kid. It's Jack's
Oh,
grandson.
just like a different hotel?
Yeah. Jack's grandson becomes a hotel caretaker of a different hotel and somehow also becomes Grady'd.
I like Grady as a verb. Sure.
All right, so book it.
All right, Warner Brothers, if you two brothers are listening,
WBD.
yeah, if you're listening, that's our pitch for The Shining, the three-heining,
Shining 3 Colorado Drift. Shining 3 The Revenge.
I've already decided if I do a third Wiener Tape, it's going to be the Wiener Tape Chicago Drift. And I need to do it now because I'm really committed to this bit
To
of
this
just naming
bit?
them after the Fast movies.
Is this 2 Wiener 2 tape?
Did I just announce 2 Wiener 2
Yep.
Whatever.
If you listened this deep into
if
this
you listen,
podcast.
if you're this far in and still listening, there's your little announcement from me, I guess. 2 Wiener 2 Tape is the thing I'm working
Coming
on.
soon.
Coming next year. I've reached out to like a bunch of bands and I need stems.
So if you're one of those bands, respond.
Yeah, if you're one of those bands, talk to your producers to send you the stems. I made it to the bar scene. We didn't get... Okay, the one thing we didn't get to, because I feel like we're wrapping up.
Yeah.
We didn't get to Skeleton Watch, the skeleton scene.
Actually, okay, you're right. I changed my mind. Best scene. Skeleton scene.
I talked about, for anyone who didn't listen to the Evil Dead episode, there's a scene in The Shining I don't like. And it's the scene when the hotel is like shining at Wendy and she walks into like the lobby and there are just skeletons everywhere. It just looks really cheap to me. Like all the other like quote unquote scares are like so weird and specific. And then it's just like generic haunted house skeleton.
It's informational. Okay.
Is it?
Yeah, because it's telling you
That
that
people died there?
yeah, people died there. All these people at this party died clearly, and Jack is seeing them alive because he's being gradied.
It's being graded. We didn't make it to the actual watching of the skeletons. And that
We
kind
can
of
skip to it.
No, that seems dishonest.
I'm good on
We could also just say we made it.
I do
and
wanna
edit it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Here we are watching skeletons.
Oh wow, look at those skeletons.
Got plenty of jackets. Anyway, I think it's a great film, and I get something new out of it every time I watch it. Like
Yeah.
legitimately, like it genuinely sometimes seems like, oh, I didn't remember this scene being in this movie.
Yeah,
Or lines like you have to clean up America or whatever. Like
keep America clean.
this,
That's the
this buck wild.
Yeah, I don't think I'm at a point where like I don't think it's that dramatic for me. Like at this point, I pretty much know beat for beat what's gonna happen and like
Yeah.
lines and stuff. But it's like these small details that I'm just like, why was that there? And just like never saw before.
Yeah.
And now that I say that, I can't think of any specific examples, but I don't feel like going through all my notes. But yeah, I don't know. It's just so rewarding, like rewatching this movie. And I
Yeah.
watch it probably twice a year at this point. Like I'll have like my annual Halloween watching, then inevitably somebody will tell me they haven't seen it. And I'm like, all right, we're going to watch it at some other point during the year. Just every time it's just like, I don't know. It's just become, and I hate this phrase, but like it's become a comfort movie for me in so many ways that just like, I know what it's going to do to me. And it's such a familiar, fun feeling.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Well, I think, it is not unlike how I feel about like we were talking about this earlier a little bit. It was like, yeah, it's a comfort movie, even though it's clearly intended to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's one of the most anxiety-inducing movies I've ever seen.
But I feel the same way about like Mulholland Drive. It's like
that's a good
it's
one.
a little fucked up movie that
Yeah.
I feel like is just a really cozy thing to watch. And I don't
Yeah.
think that means that I'm fucked up. I just think it means like I just really enjoy the way that it is.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's The Shining is the number one movie like that for me. It's like Shining and then The Gap and then Paddington 2 And then a bunch of other
And
bullshit.
then The Ascent.
The Ascent. Oh my God, I love The Ascent. I need to watch that again. One time Dan and I were going to hang out and I was like, we should watch The Ascent, which if you don't know is like, I don't know what year it came out, but it's a black and white Russian film about World War II, and it's one of the most depressing things I've ever seen.
It's just a bunch of guys climbing up a mountain and dying, right?
No, they get captured by Germans.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good. But like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just a little fucked up and nuts, you know?
Just a sick little freak.
Just a sick little freak.
All right, well, it's been fun.
It's been fun.
Thanks for joining us for The Shining.
Anything we want to plug? We don't have a guest.
No.
No.
If you're listening, you literally know what's going on. I think.
Like, that's fair.
Yeah. Like, you know what's up.
Amazing. All right. Well, this is me signing off. Thanks for listening to us talk about The Shining for however long this has been. Feels like 3 hours, but in a good way. So I feel good. I feel great. I love this movie.
Same. Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.